Space, the final frontier, a place of intrigue, curiosities, wonders, and misplaced human parts. Hello and welcome, my name is Dark, and I will be your host. Do the depths of space hold more than just thermonuclear reactions and particles of unknown origin? We'll find out today in this review of We are introduced into the game in a good old-fashioned, long and skippable cutscenes. I am a fan of this. Horror games are meant to be immersive and gradually create an atmosphere till the end, and I am an advocate of unskippable cutscenes in them. If played the first time, of course.
So that's Ishimura. Impressive.
The USG Ishimura.
You are Isaac Clarke, on a mission to check out the planet cracker USG Ishimura, which was illegally mining the planet Aegis 7 for precious resources, but for some reason lost contact, while also trying to get in contact with Isaac's love, Nicole Brennan. Unfortunately, due to bad reception and a language barrier,
What is that?
we've crash-landed on the planet cracker.
Is everyone okay?
Infested with bald monsters that are envious of Isaac's full head of hair. The beginning of the game really gave me a good impression. It starts off as very chaotic,
Jesus! Open fire! Open fire!
as you run away from our monsters called the Necromorphs. Afterwards, you are equipped with your first weapon, a small plasma cutter. All weapons come with a secondary fire, and the plasma cutter comes with one that changes its angle for 90 degrees, emphasizing even more the limb cutting that the game so vehemently tells us. Almost all of the weapons are based off of work-related things, like the handheld ore cutter line gun used to cut boulders, or the super collider contact beam that's used for more heavy-duty rocks. As for some other weapons, their secondary fires aren't bad, but my favorite one is the force guns. Also, never use it in a small room. As an avid horror game fan, I have a tendency to shoot the bodies. Also taken in regard, I've played this game when I was smaller, so I knew that these things fake death. But for a new player, this is a very nice, although scary surprise. And here was one of my favorite parts, the sound. It may be an old game, but just listen to this. So many layers of sound, from small electric boxes sizzling to big metal pipes and girders trying to settle as the ship is floating in space. The small demonic whispers implying there is more than it meets the eye in the story, giving us subtle hints. The first few chapters had many memorable parts that utilized sound very well, and kept the tension high by just having some small random sound play while you're just walking around, keeping you on your toes. The game teases you, while a reflex was created to act on every noise expecting to be attacked, and just because of that, when doing some task that takes a long time, you are on the edge, thinking something will jump out, but nothing happens. I'm lucky that my idiocy here was awarded with another power node so I could magically replenish my ammo. Sometimes it's also smart to just evade them and use the ammo sparingly. Hard mode really doesn't give you as much ammo, especially in the beginning chapters, though they tend to find you and come to your room via the ventilation system. And funny enough, they don't know how to open doors, so you can juggle them around. This was a memorable, if not tense moment.
Hazardous anomaly detected. Quarantine activated.
A very important thing in horror games is ammo balancing. Knowing when to give the player ammo and understand how to balance it is very hard, and threading that needle takes great detail and vigorous testing. Later on in the game, it was much easier to attain ammo, but I had some moments in the beginning chapters where I was almost out of ammo. The shops changed this feeling due to them having an infinite amount of ammo, and if you explored enough, you'd have a small arsenal in your pocket. From one aspect, I liked having ammo against overwhelming odds, but also it lost the meaning of survival in a horror survival game.
Quarantine lifted.
From a graphical standpoint, you can see that it's an older game. The textures are smudged and models have less polygons, but the animations were very well done, especially the facial ones. Seeing them on the hologram telling Isaac what else needs to be repaired, the animations almost compensate for the constant spam chatter. As for the atmosphere, the sounds, graphics, and minimalistic UI meld together perfectly. Even though the textures are a small resolution, I am actually a fan of more muddy graphics and rough shapes, as it instills the primal fear of the unknown due to the lesser fidelity, which is by far the best type of fear to convey in a horror game. Not able to fully recognize the face and form and letting your imagination go loose, creating even more grotesque looking creatures in our minds. The UI of the game was made really well. The health meter tube on Isaac's back, the ammo counter on all the weapons, and all the panels were located on his chest, creating a holographic screen in front of our hero while FaceTiming his friends. If it wasn't for the constant chatter.
Isaac!
Upon ignoring the tutorial panels and pressing almost all buttons, we have found out that we also have a waypoint marker that shows us the path we need to take, but we don't. There is always some spare ammo or goodies lying around if we go off course. In some games we get lost after straying off the path, but here we just... and we're good to go. Dead Space induces a very interesting emotion, and that is trepidation. I used trepidation specifically as it's a feeling of fear or anxiety about something that may happen. As Isaac goes outside in the vacuum, the game depraves your ears of information, while the only thing you can hear is Isaac's tiring breath becoming more shallow and faster as the horror ensues. Even before I mention the paranoia that you get while doing more slower actions where no monsters actually attack you, and that feeling of fake trepidation being almost as high as a jump scare.
Flushing all air vents.
As for the chapters, I felt like I was doing some fetch and kill missions. Pretty much every chapter had something specific that needed to be fetched, repaired, or killed. Of course, it made sense story-wise that the whole ship was destroyed, so almost nothing worked. Just from a design perspective, I wish there was less chatter and more silence in the game, since the characters tend to break the immersion very easily. What I would have done is use the comms less and made Isaac encounter his colleagues, as in that way it wouldn't break the silence and tension. It would simmer them down, but it wouldn't break it. I understand this is an issue with silent protagonists, but they could have made some missions less chatty, as the characters seem like they're trying to excuse themselves at doing nothing while Isaac is carrying their asses.
Isaac, you did it. Hammond, do you read? Oxygen levels are returning to normal.
The world building is very subtle. As you traverse across the sections of the Ishimura, all of them have their own purpose. For instance, you will encounter some fetuses located in some tubes and chambers. They are actually clones of the staff. If someone would lose a limb, they would clone the person and rapidly grow it, and then take the limb and attach it to them. It's interesting lore to understand why the hell is a planet cracker carrying fetuses. But it's also an interesting take on ethics and the future of medicine. Or how some people melded in with the stasis module and thus became a super fast necromorph and a formidable foe. The game always adds more monsters and challenges for us to face, which is a good way to never have a dull or repetitive moment. For instance, these very veiny chicken wings inject contraband testosterone replacers into corpses, giving them the strength of a golden era bodybuilder. They were utilized very well, where they went along to infest corpses while you're fighting the necromorphs, or were put far away to create even more enemies, letting you choose to either get damaged, but stop potentially stronger enemies and you using less ammo, or you have no health but spare ammo, so you start blasting. The player is given freedom to choose the most efficient way in the heat of battle. There are instances where there are environmental hazards that you can turn to your advantage. Or even better, the body parts of our nubile friends can be used to unalive them, specifically their spiked hands. You gotta commend Isaac for not dying of a heart attack. The necromorphs like to sneak and make no sound while they are behind you. While I don't tend to be scared in horror games, this one almost gave me a heart attack. Comparing it to other horror survival games, for example like Resident Evil, since it was a response to that series, this game has no so-called calm rooms, no melody to soothe your mind. There is always chaos, horror, and death. Sometimes in lesser or greater intensities, but almost never zero. While I was walking along the Ishimura, I felt alone and paranoid, knowing the lurking beasts are waiting, slithering inside the walls. Isolated from everything, and even my armor acting as a lair for it, gazing upon the stars and experiencing the calm before the storm. As the ship cuts through the damping silence and screams start filling the air, our protagonist lifts his weapon again, ready for the horror to repeat. The cycle of torture continues as we wade through the hordes, and the hordes are plenty. From our default necromorphs, the slasher, to the enhanced, more stronger versions, always on the edge, making the ship their playground. And lurkers skulking in the shadows, waiting to pounce on you in any moment.
Function. Hazardous condition. Please contact repair specialist.
To the brutes, crashing the walls that we so hoped would protect us. New enemies were a great asset of the game, but the Regenerator deserves an honorary mention. Good old Regenerators. Brings me back. I like it that they didn't make him super OP and he doesn't sprint in Mach 5. And using your whole arsenal to bring him down and utilizing the stasis module to slow his regeneration process was a great idea. It was still a novel concept in that era. Also, the arenas where you fight him weren't the main part of it. It was actually running away while hordes of monsters are running rampant at you while you're trying to escape the everlasting horror. Just following the story, you can see how everyone became insane, and this isn't an infection but something more.
This whole planet is one big experiment. The marker, this divine relic, made by man. They reverse engineered it a couple of hundred years ago from the real marker, a true alien artifact recovered on Earth. They dug it up, studied it, and they made it their own. Then they brought it to Aegis 7 and activated it. And you've seen the result. The stuff of nightmares.
And the culprit was the government. They created this marker that is located on the planet by reverse engineering the original one that was found on Earth hundreds of years ago, made by an alien race. And used this planet as an isolated experiment, burying it 200 years ago to see how it would work. Also exploiting the cult of unitology by making sure all of the staff on the ship are in it. The cult is centered around the marker, and the examples are set by their founder Michael Altman, who was with the team that unearthed the first marker. And all those whispers are from it. In every level you can hear it beckon, drilling into your mind and haunting you with every step. At the end, successfully fooling you into thinking that Nicole is alive. The elements of the marker itself in the game gives it more psychological elements, as Isaac first starts hearing things and after a while also seeing them. Some horror games go with either the magical perspective of horror games, like cursed places, objects, ghosts, etc., and some go with the biological one, viruses, infections, parasites, prions. Dead Space, even though it's technically biological, does give off the feeling of being haunted. Taking in regard Isaac's mind and him hearing and seeing things, they melded both ideas very well. You can harness a few philosophical standpoints on the hubris of man devouring planets, to us being curious on what the cold vacuum of space holds and seeking our next higher goals as a collective, finding alien race artifacts and fiddling with them, at the end meeting our demise. There were many memorable parts in Dead Space, and I still remember some when I was a kid. Like the guy that was headbutting a wall at the beginning of the game. I first thought there would be some kind of basic zombie enemy, but this guy just flopped. I remember this part vividly. As a kid, I was walking around, and as I turned, this thin lanky dude that's built like an African water supply network started screaming at me. It did leave an impact on me and taught me to always watch my back. Thus, every time I fought monsters in any horror game, I'd always look behind. I also remember some unexpected turret sections, from shooting space rocks to shooting suspiciously modeled meat flowers. Does Dead Space stand the test of time? From a horror game perspective, absolutely. It even blows away new games. But from a compatibility view, not as much. I had to make some tweaks and download some files as it was unplayable without them. Only part which felt a bit wonky after the fix was when you walked on creep. The mouse went crazy like someone upped the sensitivity to max. Some enemies did bug out. They get blocked and make walking or slamming sounds but will never engage you. But I think this issue is more related to the game compatibility with newer hardware or software. A thing I wasn't a fan of is the invincibility frames the enemies have while getting in the room. I've wasted a good chunk of ammo trying to shoot them while they're vaulting over the ventilation entrances. When trying to pick up items near any interactable panel, it prioritizes it, thus you need to move away to be able to pick up anything. There are certain locks opened with power nodes that can give you loot. Sometimes it's just ammo and sometimes it's something more. It's good practice to always keep a power node with you, especially in the higher difficulties. But I've encountered one game-breaking bug. So I was fighting a juggernaut, he hit me once and my HP went to 0, and I became invincible. but also I couldn't interact with any items nor refill anything, thus I was stuck here, unable to kill the last chain-smoking necromorph. So it seemed the game thought I was dead, but never gave me a game over screen. Unfortunately, all I have recorded is the sound for it, as I have selected the wrong capture profile in OBS. Dead Space adheres to an interesting theory called the Fermi Paradox, and to one specific hypothetical evolutionary explanation. It's the nature of intelligent life to destroy others. The first life form to achieve interstellar travel will necessarily prevent competitors from arising. Of course, these definitions are being used a bit more liberal in-game. An excerpt from the Dead Space wiki explains this very nicely. Humanity never had the opportunity to contact aliens, not because they didn't exist, but because a massive and lethally invasive hyperpredator absorbed most, if not all, of the organic life within our galaxy and possibly beyond, leaving much of it in a state of dead space. While I was making this video, I was thinking a bit. Making a blank review and just talking about the main things of the game would be very bland. As I'm not the first nor the last channel that is going to do this, I figured I wanted to add some random things, jokes, gags, and whatnot to it. But also add some stories I have about the game and maybe something interesting. I want my videos to be a part of me on the internet. A part of my thoughts, and a nice memory. I really do hope you enjoyed the video. It's a bit out there, but I'm happy with the outcome. As per usual, if you enjoyed the video, leave a like, leave a comment if you want to talk a bit. I have a very special video coming next, so please subscribe if you're interested in my content. And as always, my name is Dark. Thank you for watching, and goodbye.